what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new here. My name is Leila, and this is my last video of 2022. I decided it should be my books of 2022. Even though I know you guys are not that into book videos from me. I don't know why my book videos always get the lowest views, but I don't care. I just have to share all that I think about every single one of my books that I read in 2022, and that is 18 books. I think it's more than ever. Like, I don't think I ever read more in a year in my whole life. And I know on BookTube people read this much per month because they're just monsters. I don't know what's wrong with those people. I don't know how they do it, but they're able to read 18, 20 books per month. I cannot. I read this much per year, and it's actually a good book year for me if I am able to read more than 15 books, I think. Anyways, without further ado, let's go straight into it. I have quite a lot of different books, from fiction to non-fiction, from memoirs to self-help, from political to social writing. So yeah, there is gonna be a lot, so let's begin. I don't know why I did this, because I actually put it last book I read to the first book I read, so this is gonna be actually ruined now because I'm gonna take the last book from this pyramid that I made. So first two books are actually the ones I was talking about in my books of 2021. I started them in 2021, but I finished them this year, so I decided to include them. So this year started for me with Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, and I wasn't that into it last year, so I barely read it. But this year, I don't know, right after New Year, you know, you're staying home eating food from New Year's Eve, just trying to, you know, get back to reality. And I feel like this book hit the spot. Like, it was perfect time to read this book. I think like winter time is perfect for this book. I don't know why, don't ask me. There's something Christmassy, wintry about this book, so it really did it for me in January this year. So I definitely grew into it, and I enjoyed the writing, I enjoyed the plot. But you know, there's part 2 of Little Women. I think it's, I don't know, Little Wives or something, because I know American version has 2 together, but for some reason UK version does not, and in Europe they usually sell UK version. So I did not read the second one, which I think is Little Wives. If I'm mistaken, I'll correct myself. But I watched the movie right after this book, and I know what's gonna happen in the second book, and I'm really not that interested in reading it now that I know the main plot twist. So I am done with this, and I wouldn't say I definitely enjoyed it. It was okay. Like, it wasn't the best book of the year, but it was good classic of the year, because I think this year somehow I didn't read as many classics as I usually do. So therefore this book is 4 out of 5. Next one is Brave New World by Huxley, and I read the majority of it last year, but I finished it this year, and I pretty much said everything I was thinking about it in that video, so you might want to check it out, because I also have my old notes in that video, but also you don't have to, because I have my old notes in that video. Anyways, a joke for those who are my loyal subscribers, but Brave New World is pretty much this dystopian novel, and in a lot of ways it is always being mentioned with 1984. I feel like these two are always mentioned as the greatest dystopian, anti-utopian novels of the 20th century, so you probably have heard a lot about it as well. So did I, and that's why I wanted to read it. I read it and it made me feel depressed, because I was like, we're doomed, there is no happy ending, kind of. For some reason 1984 I liked more than this, but this one was easier to read. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like 1984 overall was very dark and depressing, but this, the ending of it made me feel depressed, and I can honestly say I didn't enjoy it that much. I wouldn't want to reread it. It was good, but not to the point where it's like my favorite book. So 4 out of 5. And next book is Angela Davis, Women, Race and Class, something I wanted to read for such a long time, and it's basically a study published by Angela Davis, about women's rights, women's lives, and hypocrisy, and the reality of women, and therefore different perspectives of feminists, white feminists not supporting women of color, and also rich women not being able to understand poor women, and how race and class really change the reality of a woman. So if you are a poor woman and if you are a woman of color, chances are and statistics are your life was much tougher than it is for a white woman who lived in a well-off family and then married a well-off man, you know. So I think she said it perfectly. It's a really difficult book, I gotta say. Definitely don't read it just for fun. It's definitely more like a study. Like, I feel like if you are into sociology and race and class and feminism, you definitely need to read it. It's definitely a brilliant book that I can recommend to everyone. And I think especially if you're a woman, you need to read this. You need to stay woke. And this book just is amazing, and Angela Davis stole my heart, because to be able to just write this book and stay true to your beliefs and values, and no matter what, nothing broke her. She went through so much and she stayed true to her views. I can honestly recommend this. 10 out of 10. The next book I read is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, and this one I saw a lot on TikTok, so I was like, okay, let me see what's up. And then when I started reading it, I saw that it is quite controversial because of the author's past. You can Google if you want, but yeah, it was too late for me to stop reading and to not buy the book. But nonetheless, I think the story was interesting. It's not my favorite. It's not my type of genre. I don't know. There's something about contemporary writing that I'm kind of a snob when it comes to that. But this year I actually read a lot of contemporary writers, so that's interesting. But this is an interesting story where basically it's about Marsh Girl who stayed alone in her house because everyone left her, basically abandoned her. She was kind of known as this wild girl in their town. And which year was this? Okay, it's late 1969, so there's some points of racism where you get to see American racism when it comes to black people, although the main character is not black, but there are some side characters that were the nicest to her and they were black, and you get to see how rich white people were calling them, how they were calling her, which is a very heartbreaking story. And honestly, I can say that the ending of it is what did it for me. I did not expect that, honestly did not. But I also enjoyed how she kept on going between the past and the present, because she was convicted of a murder, and throughout the book you learn how she met the person she was accused of murdering, and kind of see why she would be able to do it. But then also you just know that she's not someone who would be able to kill, you know. So it's really interesting and also an easy read, so I think it was really fast to read. And for that, I think it's 3 out of 5 for me, because, you know, definitely wouldn't reread it. I can recommend it if you want to kill time, but you can also just watch a movie because it's coming out or came out, I don't know. Next book is my first book by Tessa Moshfegh. I might be saying her name wrong, and trust me, I know it's annoying when people say your name wrong, because like no one can say my last name until I pronounce it for them. It's Mekdiaba, okay? Anyways, but the book, My Year of Rest and Relaxation, amazing. Like, it was, again, so easy to read, so fast. It's a contemporary artist, contemporary writer, and I saw it so many times on BookTube, Bookstagram, BookTok, and I was just like in love with the cover. I think this is the first time I bought a book just because I was obsessed with the cover. Like, look at it, it's so gorgeous. And I feel like anytime I would be reading it in public, people were always like looking at my cover, and I was like, I'm that girl. So I bought it just because of the cover, but also it was interesting. So basically this book is about this young, pretty, thin, you know, European beauty standard white girl who went to Colombia, who is now living on the Upper East Side. Okay, she lives in New York and she's depressed, and then throughout the story you learn the reason for her depression is pretty much that she lost her parents. No spoilers, but that's kind of like, you learn it pretty soon. And then she decides to just hide all the pain away with a bunch of antidepressants and stuff, and she decides to hibernate for a year. So that's all I'm gonna say. A lot of people hate the main character, but I honestly kind of can understand her. Like, I feel like she went through so much. I don't know, am I the same as her? Like, why do people hate her and I don't? Like, am I the problem? Anyways, this book, 4 out of 5. Definitely want to read more of Mushfiq's writing, and I know a lot of people talk about her other book, Levona. I hope I'm saying it right. So yeah, definitely want to read more of Mushfiq in 2023. Next book is Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. I actually wrote an article reviewing this book. I absolutely loved it. So this book is a memoir of singer Michelle Zauner. She is part of this indie band Japanese Breakfast. I never heard about her, never listened to her music, but I saw again on TikTok and Instagram people talking about this book, so I decided to give it a try, and the topic really interested me. Basically, it's about her mom that was diagnosed with cancer, and it's a book about grief, about her Korean heritage, because she is half Korean. It was really heartbreaking to read, although of course like Zauner is so talented, and she was able to convey the story in a way that's both filled with humor and happy memories, and you know, examples from her life with her mom that makes you feel like, oh yeah, I can see my mom in this as well. And then just her losing her mom and going through that. It was definitely one of the greatest books of the year, something I can recommend to honestly every single person, and a book that I would want to reread, maybe, I don't know, just because of the story and the feelings. And I think she did amazing, and I would honestly read another book by her, so I can recommend it to everyone. And this book gets 5 out of 5. The book that I actually read before Crying in H Mart, I just forgot. It's Dracula by Bram Stoker, and it's so huge, and usually I'm so scared of huge books. Like, I don't know what it is about me, but I'm just like, oh, if it's longer than 200 pages, should I even like read it? I don't know. This is something I want to change in 2023 because I have a lot of huge books, many of them by Russian depressing authors, classics, and you know, they could write for pages and pages. So definitely want to read more big books in 2023, but this one was definitely one of the biggest books, and I really enjoyed the story. Dracula, who doesn't know about Dracula, but not many people know that it was Bram Stoker that actually gave life to him, and he when he wrote this book, it wasn't that popular until I think it was performed at the theater as a play, and that's when it became popular. And you know, now it's pop culture phenomenon. There's so many movies, series, adaptations of this novel, and I definitely enjoyed it. It's just somewhere at the end of it, it just became too slow, you know. We kept on going and going, and I just felt like this could be done much faster and shorter, but you know, still I enjoyed this book. I think it's one of the greatest classics I read. It was still cold, and I felt like I was in that book. I was like in this gothic theme, you know, so I loved it. And I never enjoyed like Dracula movies, so I think the book is so much greater than any movie I watched. But I don't know if I should give it 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5, because I feel like the end of it being so slow made it harder for me to enjoy it fully. But 5 out of 5 because, you know what, it's iconic and it deserves it. And also my lipstick matches the cover. love it. Next book I read was Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, and I really don't like the cover, but it was on sale because I think the cover was so ugly. I'm sorry, but it was. I don't even know how much it was, but it was much cheaper than her other cover of this book. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna save my coins. Like, I don't care about cover as much as what's in the book, right? But I really did not enjoy this book. It was just not doing it for me. I read Virginia Woolf's The Room of One's Own, I think, last year, and I was like, oh my god, I need to read something else from her, her fiction as well. And I can tell you, her fiction didn't do it for me. I want to still give it a try because I know there's one more book that people rave about, and it's, I think, Miss Dalloway or Mrs. Dalloway. But I think the way she writes, which is also iconic, like she's known for her writing, which is like regarded as this modernism of the 20th century that's not for everyone, and I don't think it was for me. So I might still give it a try and read one more novel from Virginia Woolf, but this one didn't do it for me. And basically the story is about this family that lives in this house going to the lighthouse, and that's all I'm gonna say because, like, I don't want to spoil, and it's quite short, and a lot of it is not even about the plot, you know. Like, I can tell you the plot of the book in 5 minutes, even less probably, but it's the way it's written that is the reason why you should give it a try, because I didn't get it. Like, I didn't get her writing. It didn't do it for me. So maybe you will enjoy it. Definitely worth to try and see, but I can give it 3 out of 5 just because I didn't like it. Next book is A Movable Feast by Hemingway. This was my second book by him. My first one was The Old Man and the Sea, but this one, as of now, is my favorite. First of all, Hemingway is known as the man who changed the way we write today. Just straight to the point type of writing, which I honestly love him for. And this book is about his early years as a writer, living in Paris before he became who he became eventually, and he changed the world with his writing. And I honestly would love to read more of Hemingway next year as well. That's why I already bought a book from him that I definitely plan to read next year. So this book just stole my heart. The way he writes, I actually highlighted a few parts because it was just so beautiful. And you guys know he was a journalist before, and this book is actually when he decided to pursue writing, so he stopped being a journalist. So he shares his process, and for example, here's his quote: "I always worked until I had something done and always stopped when I knew what was going to happen next. That way I could be sure of going on the next day. Do not worry, you have always written before and you will write now. All you have to do is write one true sentence. Write the truest sentence that you know. It was easy then because there was always one true sentence that I knew or had seen or had heard someone say. If I started to write elaborately or like someone introducing or presenting something, I found that I could cut that scroll work or ornament out and throw it away and start with the first true, simple, declarative sentence I had written." And many more great quotes in this book that you will just want to highlight and remember. And yeah, I adore this book. One of the greatest books I have read this year. Absolutely love it. 5 out of 5. Next one is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. The book that I have heard about for so many years and I had on my TBR for ages. So I finally read it, and basically it's about this character who is based on Sylvia Plath and based on her struggles with mental health. If you guys don't know, Sylvia Plath unfortunately took her own life, and in this book you kind of see how it all started happening, her struggle with mental health. It's basically like fiction based on real life, you know, and the main character is also basically her. So she starts with the period when she was an intern at this fashion magazine in the summer of 1953, and then we just start seeing the progression of her depression and how mental health is ugly mental health is, there is nothing romantic about it, because I feel like these days a lot of people want to claim they have this or that, you know, without getting actually diagnosed. And this book is very honest about what it's like to have struggles with it, no matter what your diagnosis is. It makes you like feel so sad when you read it. So definitely if you have depression or you can be easily triggered, I don't recommend reading it because it might make you depressed, because it made me feel depressed, but I don't have chronic depression or anything like that. But it made me feel really sad, and made me so sad for her that she had to go through it, and it's so sad that it ended that way for her. But in the book, you somehow get happier ending that makes you want to believe that, you know, for that character at least it didn't end the way it did for the author. So 5 out of 5, highly recommend. Next book is The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. I'm trying to say it with the accent, but van der Kolk, I don't know how to say it. Okay, anyways, this book took quite a while for me to read, not just because it's long, but yeah, it's quite long, but because it was so intense to read about all these traumas, and a lot of them are childhood traumas, a lot of it is essay, a lot of it is P-word, and it's just like a lot of trigger warnings for this book. But it is a psychological book, so it is written by an actual, is he psychiatrist or a psychotherapist? I think psychiatrist, but person who actually studied it. I hate reading psychology by so-called psychologists who never went to school and never learned anything, but they just base their like knowledge on nothingness, you know. So definitely this one is more than that. This one is written by someone who spent his whole life studying trauma, and I think you have heard about this book before. Everyone and their mama is talking about it. So I absolutely loved it. It was difficult to read emotionally, just because reading about all those people's lives being ruined by trauma that caused their issues in their adult life. But I think everyone needs to read it, everyone, and there's so much to learn from it. And I think as a future parent, someday I hope to have children, you know, and it was so good to read, to be able to see how not to fuck up your children, you know, and in obvious ways, but also just like to understand that childhood is so important and you are responsible for that life. You know, how your children will turn out is a lot about how you treat them when they're children. So yeah, amazing. 5 out of 5. Next book I read was Animal Farm by George Orwell, something I also had on my TBR for a while, ever since I read 1984. My husband actually was telling me I should read it because it's very short and very easy and to the point. So it's basically based on Soviet Union and how this animal farm decided to overthrow their owner, like the man, and to become self-governed farm by animals. And then basically pigs take over. And you know, one quote that really I love it, and is right here on top of the book: all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And that's all I'm gonna say. As someone who is from post-Soviet country and knows a lot about Soviet Union and how it wasn't about equality at all, it was funny to read. It was a great satire, and I honestly respect Orwell for his honesty and for journalism that he did. So 5 out of 5. Next book, The War of Art, I had on my TBR since 2020, I think. This book is shit. I don't know why it was recommended. I don't know why I heard people talking about it, because it's awful. It's just honestly awful. It's like huge letters, a lot of pages, just super short. It's like one paragraph per page and that's it. You can read it in one day, but it's so useless. He claims a lot of things that he does not then explain, you know, and does not give any credit to any reliable source. Like, if you want to write a self-help book, just go into your personal experiences, you know, don't claim like some psychological things that you just got out of your head, or like, that's my opinion, you know. Like, I did not enjoy it. I disliked this book. It's honestly like, yeah, some parts were great, but it's like you can read quotes from Instagram, like inspirational quotes from Instagram, and not waste your time on this to feel motivated. I absolutely did not like it. I thought, as it's written by a writer, it might help my writing, it might help me feel inspired, motivated. It did not. It's just like a bunch of nothing, and I give it 1 out of 5. Next book, however, Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott and Lamott. I don't know. I honestly don't know this writer. I don't know anything about her previous books, but I saw Jen M on YouTube share this book in one of her book videos, and I was like, I need to read it, because I'm really into reading, like, writing books by writers, you know. So this book was so good. Like, it made me want to read other books by her, but I don't know if her other books would do it for me, because this one I just genuinely enjoyed, because it's instructions on writing. Like, honestly, it was right at the right time in my life, and I can recommend it to everyone who wants to start writing. It's like very simple and honest book about writing that inspires you, motivates you, everything that I thought this one will do. Oh, by the way, instead of this one, just read Big Magic by, I'm trying to see on my bookshelf, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. Yeah, so much better. This guy just like couldn't do it. But if you want to read something about like being able to work through your inner creative battles, as it says here, you should just read that one, because it's much better. But back to this one is amazing for writers specifically, and it's, as I said, it's a lot of practical advice on writing, how to get into it, how to do it. Very simple, very honest, and I think it's a must for every single writer. Definitely made me want to read more books by writers about writing, which I definitely plan to do next year. So 5 out of 5. Next book I read was Kazuo Ishiguro, Never Let Me Go. This one also was on my list for a long time. I heard a lot of people talk about it, and I wanted to see what's up. And honestly, I wasn't sure, because I think this is more like sci-fi genre, and I'm not that into sci-fi. I love psychological thrillers though, and there is some taste of psychological thriller when you read it. I loved that till the end. I didn't know what actually was going on. Basically, this book is about a group of students who grow up in this kind of orphanage, but you don't know what exactly going on, and then you're learning that, and as you're learning that, it's very shocking, and you just don't know till the end, like, so what's gonna happen. So basically that's how I'm gonna tell you about this book without spoiling anything, but I honestly can recommend it. This was my first time reading Kazuo Ishiguro, and I definitely want to read more books by him next year, or maybe the year after, because I have so many books I need to read next year. But definitely want to read some other books by him, because I heard so many great things about him, and this book gets 4 out of 5, just because I cannot say it's my favorite, but it was fun. Next book was recommended to me by my psychotherapist, and it is Games People Play by Eric Berne, and it's basically about, it's also written by a psychiatrist or a psychologist, you know, one or the other, and it's all about the games that we play. It's an interesting dive into the psyche and seeing how different relationships are the way they are, not because it's just like one of a kind type of situation, but because it's actually a human psyche. Like, this is the game we're playing, you know. And I think one of the games that I can definitely relate to is I Will Show Them, I think it's called, where basically I've been playing it my whole life. Whenever people don't believe in me, I'm like, I will show them, and then I usually do. Yeah, I do that. But there are so many more games that you can find from this book that I can recommend you to read. And it's so short but so fun. And now my husband is reading it because I told him he has to read it, so we can discuss it. So 5 out of 5. Maybe 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5. Next book is my absolute favorite of this year, and it stole my heart. John Didion, The Year of Magical Thinking. Wow. I heard about Joan Didion for such a long time. I wanted to read her books, and I saw that this one is always talked about the most, so I was like, let's see what it's all about. And basically it is a non-fiction following 1 year in her life after her husband passed away. After their 40 years together, all of a sudden he just died one evening, and it was just so shocking. And I really like the beginning of the book where it says, life changes fast, life changes in the instant. You sit down to dinner and life as you know it ends. The question of self-pity. It just focuses on the grief and mourning and death, and I think one of the great points she makes is how Western society and capitalist society, I would say, makes it normal to move on. Someone dies and you just move on. You don't take time to grieve. And I think as someone who lost a very close family member, my cousin, when I was 12, and now I'm 27, and it's been 15 years and I still grieve. You know, I still go through it. I still did not fully accept that she's gone. And so when I was reading this book, it was so comforting for me to know that I'm not the only one. That I feel like it never gets better. It just like you get used to it, but that hole inside of you, like no one can ever, you know, fix it. You just live with that hole. And that's why this book was so important for me to read. I didn't expect it to be so honest and true and eloquent, and I absolutely fell in love with Joan Didion's writing. It's so simple, it's so real, it's so raw, and just made me want to read more from her. And definitely plan to do that next year. So 5 out of 5. Absolutely recommend. Everyone needs to read it. And the last book of this year is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. I saw this book so many times on Instagram, TikTok, I don't think on YouTube for some reason, but yeah, I honestly love the cover. The soy sauce fish, love it. So it's so fun, and the book is fun as well. I was talking about the cover, but the book is fun as well. And it was so easy, especially after reading about death. So the main character of this book is a convenience store woman, as you got it, and she loves her job. She's 36, and her family, her friends are like, you need to quit your job, come on, you're 36, you cannot be a convenience store woman, worker, you need to get married and you need to get a better paying job. And basically it's an interesting dive into today's reality where a woman is allowed 2 things now. She can be either a successful businesswoman making a lot of money, and then people can kind of forgive her for not being a mother, a wife. It's understandable. But then the other side is like, well, if you don't have a great, highly paying job, you might as well get married and make children, be useful to the society. Otherwise, you're being a foreign object, you know. And it was really brilliantly put. It was so fun to read. How she was trying to navigate that and how she was trying to figure it out. But I can honestly say that the ending of it made me really happy, and I feel like convenience store to her is what journalism is to me. It's just something you want to do, and it's not about the money, it's not about the status, it's just something you're born to do. And it's hard to explain to people why you want to be what you want to be, but like, I think you need to read this book if you feel like societal pressure when it comes to what you're doing or your choices in life. I think it's gonna be fun for you to go through this with the convenience store woman. And we're back with the whole pyramid of books, and that means we're done with today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it was a lot, but I cannot do it any faster. I just had to sit down and talk about it, and I'm so happy that my last video of this year is about books, because books are such a huge part of my life. It is what helps me with my social anxiety, because whenever I'm alone in public, I can always grab my book, read it, and forget about the real world. Because as someone who has social anxiety, it always feels like everyone is staring at me. Like I'm so conscious of my surroundings, and I feel like books help me so much to just get out of it and just get into the book and that reality that I'm reading about. And I really hope that next year I can read a book per month at least. But it's also not about the quantity for next year. Next year I just want to make sure that I read big books that scare me, and that I just will enjoy the process, you know, and not try to do it fast, etc. But I really did good this year. I put a goal of reading, I think, 15 books, and I read 18, so proud of myself. And if you want to get back into books, now is the time. I hope you can buy one of those that I recommended and get into them and thank me later. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, click that bell to get notified about my new videos, and I will see you next year. Happy New Year! Bye!